A jewelry store ignored an old lady the next day. She bought the company and fired them all. Hello everyone. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to hear more meaningful stories. Mary had always been a woman of quiet determination. Her hands, weathered and worn from years of labor, clutched her old, faded scarf tightly as she stepped into the gleaming Golden Sun jewelry store. The contrast between her modest appearance and the luxurious surroundings was undeniable. The store itself shimmered like a world apart. Sleek glass display cases glistened under warm golden lighting, showcasing elegant jewels that seemed as though they belonged in a realm of their own. Employees in immaculate uniforms stood behind the counters, their polished faces reflecting an air of superiority. As Mary walked in, the soft chime of the bell above the door seemed to reverberate in the hush of the room, drawing attention to her. The atmosphere shifted almost imperceptibly, whispers exchanged behind polished counters, the subtle narrowing of eyes as staff members took stock of her worn clothes. The humble scarf draped around her shoulders. She didn't fit into this world of opulence, and they could tell. Mary, her heart racing, forced herself to move forward. She had waited for this moment for so long, saved every penny she could to make this purchase. A gift for her granddaughter on the occasion of her wedding, a silver necklace with a delicate blue stone that shone like a piece of the sky. The thought of seeing her granddaughter's eyes light up with joy filled her with determination. She approached the nearest display case, her voice trembling slightly as she greeted the young saleswoman. "Good morning. I would like to see the necklace in that display case," Mary said, pointing toward the far right corner. Emily, the young employee, glanced at Mary with a look that bordered on disdain. Her eyes, cold and assessing, swept over Mary's unpolished appearance before she offered a sharp, almost dismissive response. "Which one?" she asked, her tone laced with indifference, as if she couldn't be bothered to acknowledge someone so beneath her. Mary's heart fluttered with uncertainty, but she steeled herself. "The silver necklace with the blue stone," she replied, her voice gaining a bit more strength, a glimmer of hope in her eyes as she pointed again. The necklace seemed so close now, so within reach. Emily didn't even try to mask the smirk that curled at the corners of her lips. "Oh, that one," she said, as if Mary had just asked to see something utterly out of place. "I don't think you can afford it. It's very expensive." The words hit Mary like a blow to the chest. She blinked, her eyes momentarily stinging, but she refused to show weakness. She had saved for this. She had worked, scrimped, and sacrificed every little penny for years. "I have the money," she managed, her voice now firmer, her dignity hanging by a thin thread. "Can you please show it to me?" Instead of responding, Emily rolled her eyes and turned toward the manager, John, who stood nearby, a smug expression on his face as he observed the interaction with apparent amusement. "Sir, this woman wants to see the necklace in the corner," Emily said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. John, who had been watching the exchange with an air of superiority, furrowed his brow as he slowly approached. Dressed in an impeccable black suit, he exuded a sense of authority, but it was a hollow kind of power, one that seemed to belittle others rather than uplift them. He looked Mary up and down, his gaze cold and dismissive. "Sorry, that necklace isn't available for sale," he said curtly, not even bothering to hide his contempt. "You can look at some other pieces that might better fit your budget." Mary's chest tightened as the words sunk in. "But I saw it in the display case," she protested, her voice faltering, confusion and hurt swirling within her. "Why can't I buy it?" "It's just a display model," John said flatly, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Not for sale." The finality in his tone stung, the way he dismissed her request as though she were an inconvenience. Mary felt a lump form in her throat, a wave of helplessness threatening to swallow her. But she held her ground, her hand still clutching the money she had saved so carefully, as though it could somehow prove her worth. She looked around, hoping for someone else, anyone else, to acknowledge her. Maybe there was another employee who would see her, who would offer the kindness and understanding she so desperately needed. But as her gaze shifted, she noticed something. The older employee, Betty, met her eyes briefly before quickly turning away. It wasn't subtle. The message was clear: "Don't bother me." As she stood there, trying to make sense of the cold treatment she was receiving, she overheard a conversation from the nearby counter. It was Tom, another employee, speaking to Emily in hushed tones, though not nearly quiet enough for Mary to miss a single word. Does she really think she can buy anything here? Just look at that scarf. Probably from some flea market. Tom whispered, his voice laced with mockery. Emily stifled a laugh, leaning in to whisper back, she probably can't even afford the box it comes in. Mary froze, her face flushing crimson as she realized she had heard every mocking word. The laughter that followed felt like a dagger to her heart. She had walked into this store with nothing but the desire to give her granddaughter a meaningful gift. Yet here she was, reduced to a joke, an object of ridicule. But Mary wasn't one to back down easily. With a deep breath, she turned toward another counter, where David, a young man polishing the glass display, stood. She approached him, her voice soft but resolute. "Excuse me," she said, opening her bag to reveal the envelope filled with the money she had so carefully saved over the years. "I would like to see the necklace in that case." David didn't even look up at her. His focus remained entirely on the glass, as though she wasn't even there. After a moment, he casually glanced at the envelope she held out and then shrugged dismissively. "We don't have anything that cheap here," he muttered, his tone dripping with disinterest. "Maybe you should check out some smaller shops in the area. They might have something more suited to your budget." The words cut through Mary like a knife. She gripped the envelope tighter, her fingers white with the effort, but she couldn't bring herself to say anything in response. Instead, she turned and walked toward the door, her heart heavy, her feet feeling like lead as she exited the store, leaving behind the mocking laughter of the employees that echoed in her ears. As the cold wind hit her face, tears welled up in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. The thought of her granddaughter's smiling face kept her moving forward. "I'll come back," she whispered to herself. "I have to." But no matter how hard she tried to push the pain away, the sting of humiliation clung to her, a constant reminder of how she had been treated, like nothing, like a mere inconvenience in their perfect world. Mary's resolve hardened as she walked away from the Golden Sun jewelry store. The sting of humiliation still fresh, lingering like a bitter taste in her mouth. Her old scarf, now a symbol of her modest life, fluttered gently in the cold breeze as she made her way down the bustling street. Her heart heavy with each step. The laughter from the employees, the sneering, mocking laughter, echoed in her mind, a cruel soundtrack to the memories of the way they had treated her. It was as if the years of hard work, the years of sacrifice, had meant nothing to them. To them, she was just an old woman in a worn-out scarf, nothing more, nothing less. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of hurried footsteps approaching from behind. She turned, and there, hurrying toward her with a bag full of shopping, was Maria, a young woman from the village. Maria's bright eyes reflected a genuine concern, the kind Mary hadn't seen in a long time, especially not in the jewelry store. "Mrs. Mary," Maria called out, her voice filled with warmth. "Are you all right? I just picked up a few gifts for my family." "What's wrong? You look upset." Mary smiled faintly, the corners of her lips trembling as she wiped away a stray tear that had managed to escape despite her best efforts to hold it back. "Oh, it's nothing, dear," she said, her voice soft but tinged with sadness. "I'm used to it. People like me, we don't get much respect." Maria's brow furrowed, and her face flushed with indignation. "That's outrageous. They have no right to treat you like that. You've helped so many people in the village. If they knew who you really were, they wouldn't dare look down on you like that." The words hit Mary harder than she expected. It was true. She had spent years helping neighbors, caring for the sick, running errands for those who couldn't manage, giving away what little she had to brighten someone else's day. But in the eyes of the jewelry store staff, none of that seemed to matter. She was still just a frail old woman in a threadbare scarf. Someone they could mock, someone they could dismiss. It felt like the weight of their scorn was pressing down on her chest. But Maria's words brought a spark of something else, something that had been dormant for years. A flicker of defiance. "I don't deserve this," Mary muttered under her breath, more to herself than to Maria. "I've worked my whole life for this moment. I wanted to give my granddaughter something beautiful, something she could cherish, but they saw me as nothing. Just a joke." Maria shook her head vigorously. "They don't know who you are, Mrs. Mary. And you don't need them to. I can't stand the way they treated you. But don't let them make you feel small. You're stronger than that. Mary paused, letting the words sink in. Maria was right. She was stronger than that. She had spent years building a life from nothing. Slowly and steadily, with grit and determination. She had always been a fighter. But in that moment, she had felt weak, humiliated. The tears she had fought so hard to hold back threatened to come again. But she swallowed them down, straightening her posture. You're right, Maria, Mary said, her voice gaining strength with each word. I've spent too long letting people look down on me. No more. I've saved every penny I could. I won't let them take this from me. I'll show them. Maria smiled, her eyes bright with admiration. That's the spirit, Mrs. Mary. You're not just anyone. You're special, and you deserve respect. I'll be here for you if you need anything. Just say the word. Mary gave a small, grateful nod, but there was no time for more words. She had already made up her mind. The fire of determination that had been sparked in her chest was now burning fiercely. She would not let the people at Golden Sun win. She would make them see her, not as a poor, invisible old woman, but as someone who had the power to change things. As she walked away from Maria, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about buying a necklace anymore. This was about reclaiming her dignity. She wasn't going to let those arrogant, condescending employees get away with treating her like that. She would fight for what was right, for herself, and for anyone else who had been made to feel small because of their appearance, their age, or their circumstances. Later that evening, after a long day of gathering her thoughts, Mary sat alone at the small kitchen table in her humble home. The money she had saved, all neatly tucked away in an envelope, lay in front of her. It was more than just cash. It represented years of sacrifice, of waking up early, baking bread for extra income, selling fresh vegetables at the market, running errands for neighbors in need. Each coin was a piece of her life's work, a piece of her soul. She had worked for this moment, and no one, not even the staff at Golden Sun, could take that from her. She reached for a pen and began to write a letter. The words flowed from her pen with a clarity she hadn't known she possessed. She was writing to someone she knew could help her, someone who could make things happen quickly. Her old friend, Teresa, who had connections in business, who understood the importance of taking action when the time was right. Mary's hands shook slightly as she wrote, but her mind was calm. She knew this was the right thing to do. Her heart raced as she signed the letter, sealing it with a firm hand. This was no longer just about a necklace. It was about standing up to the world that had made her feel invisible. It was about taking back her dignity, her respect, and making sure that no one would ever treat her like that again. The letter was addressed to a business associate of Teresa's, someone who had the power to make a change in the ownership of Golden Sun Jewelry. Mary's fingers lingered over the final words, but her resolve only strengthened. This was the beginning of something. She wasn't just a helpless old woman anymore. She was a force to be reckoned with. That night, as she sealed the envelope and prepared it for delivery, Mary felt a sense of calm sweep over her. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long while, she felt the weight of her own strength. And she knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. The employees at Golden Sun would learn what it truly meant to respect everyone, no matter their appearance or their bank balance. The transformation was coming, and Mary would lead it. The days that followed were a blur of restless anticipation for Mary. The letter was sent, and now she had to wait. Each morning, she would rise early, make her coffee, and sit by the window, staring out at the world as it passed by. The world hadn't stopped for her. The sun still rose, people still hurried along their daily routines, and life in her quiet neighborhood continued its course. But for Mary, everything had changed. A fire burned inside her, fueled by the injustice she had suffered at the hands of the Golden Sun Jewelry Store's staff. It wasn't just about the necklace anymore, it was about dignity, respect, and the realization that she, too, had the power to reclaim what was rightfully hers. Her hands, though wrinkled with age, moved with purpose. She spent the days making plans, organizing her thoughts, and preparing for the moment when her life would take a new turn. Her resolve, once a flickering flame, was now a roaring blaze, growing with each passing hour. The harsh, Dismissive words from the employees, Lucis' sneering laughter, Stephen's condescending smirk, Alexander's dismissive shrug, they replayed in her mind, each repetition stoking her inner fire. I won't let them forget me. I won't let them keep treating people like this, she whispered to herself as she walked through her small house, each step echoing with newfound purpose. One afternoon, as she was tending to her garden, the phone rang. The sudden sound broke the stillness of the air, making her jump. Her heart leapt into her throat as she picked it up, already knowing who it was. Mrs. Mary? It's done. The transaction has gone through. The voice on the other end was familiar, Teresa's. The sense of relief and excitement that washed over Mary was almost overwhelming. She could hardly breathe, but she kept her voice steady. Are you sure? It's all set? She asked, her fingers tightening around the phone as if holding onto the last vestiges of her old life. Yes, the jewelry store is now under your name, Teresa confirmed, her tone calm but filled with satisfaction. Mary's hands shook, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of what she had just accomplished. She was no longer the powerless, dismissed woman from the quiet village. No, she was the owner of the very place that had once mocked her. The significance of that moment hit her in waves, each breath filling her with more pride and defiance than she had ever known. After hanging up, she stood by the window, staring out into the fading light of the afternoon. She wasn't sure what came next, but she knew she had made her mark. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about creating a new reality for everyone who had been treated as less than because of their age, their clothes, or their appearance. The next step was clear. She would go back to Golden Sun and let them know who she truly was, and what she intended to do. The following morning, she arrived at the jewelry store in a sleek, dark dress. It was nothing extravagant, but it was the first time in a long time she felt like she wasn't just blending into the background. She walked in with her head held high, her back straight, her gaze unwavering. The bell above the door jingled, and immediately, the employees, Lucy, Alexander, Stephen, paused in their conversations, their heads turning toward the door. Their expressions shifted from indifference to surprise. Mary stepped forward, her steps confident, echoing in the now silent store. She approached the counter where Stephen stood, his eyes narrowing as he tried to place her. For a moment, he appeared confused, perhaps even uncertain. Then, without warning, she reached into her bag and pulled out a set of documents, papers that would forever change the fate of this place. She slammed them down on the counter with a sharp crack, a sound that reverberated through the room. I'm the new owner of this store, she declared, her voice steady and commanding. The room fell into a stunned silence. The once proud employees who had mocked her, who had looked down on her, stood frozen, their mouths agape. Lucis' face drained of color as she took a step back, unable to form a single word. Alexander glanced at Stephen, then at the documents, his face a mixture of disbelief and panic. Only Isabel, the older employee, remained still, her expression unreadable but her eyes filled with something that Mary couldn't quite place. Was it regret? Stephen, recovering from the shock, straightened his posture, trying to regain some semblance of authority. But it was clear that the power had shifted. You can't be serious, he stammered, his arrogance faltering for the first time. Mary raised her hand, silencing him. Oh, I'm quite serious, she replied, her voice cold but firm. And as the new owner of this store, I am here to make one thing very clear. You will no longer treat anyone like you treated me. I saw it all, the mocking, the dismissiveness, the way you refused to serve customers just because of their appearance or their money. It ends today, and for those of you who can't respect this new vision, you're free to leave right now. The silence in the store was deafening. None of the employees spoke. There was only the sound of Lucis' shallow breaths as she stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. Stephen's face twisted in anger, but there was no power behind it now. Mary had taken it all from him. You're fired, she continued, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. Both of you, Lucy and Alexander. Effective immediately. The words hung in the air, sharp and final. Lucis' face turned crimson as she opened her mouth to protest. But Mary held up her hand, stopping her before a single word could escape. Don't say anything, she said, her tone unyielding. There's nothing to say. You've lost your chance. I've given you all the opportunity you needed to change, and you chose arrogance instead. She turned her attention to Isabel, who had remained silent but observant throughout the entire exchange. Mary studied her for a moment, as if measuring her worth. Isabel looked down at the counter, clearly uncomfortable but not entirely hostile. I know you haven't always been enthusiastic, Mary said, her voice softer but still firm. But I've seen you do your job with more grace than the others. I think you deserve a second chance. Isabel's face softened, and she nodded. Thank you, Mrs. Mary. I won't disappoint you. Turning back to the others, Mary let the full weight of her words settle in. This store is going to change. I will turn Golden Sun into a place where everyone is treated with respect. No matter who they are, what they wear, or how much they can spend. If you can't live by this rule, you're free to leave now. But I believe we can all do better. The air in the store shifted. It was no longer a place of exclusion and condescension, but a place where transformation was possible. One by one, the remaining employees, the ones who had hesitated, who had seen the error in their ways, stepped forward. It was the beginning of something entirely new. Mary knew the road ahead would be tough. There would be challenges, obstacles, and people who doubted her vision. But she was prepared. She wasn't just an old woman in a worn scarf anymore. She was the owner of Golden Sun, and this was her store now. In the days that followed, Mary immersed herself in her new role with quiet intensity. Golden Sun jewelry, once a symbol of exclusion and scorn, was now under her watchful eye, and she was determined to transform it into a sanctuary of respect and dignity for everyone who crossed its threshold. With each passing day, she observed the employees closely, noting their every action, their tone when speaking to customers, the subtle looks they exchanged when a person of modest means walked through the door. No detail escaped her. She could feel the energy of the place shifting beneath her feet as she stepped deeper into her authority. Her first few days were spent carefully choosing who would stay and who would go. She understood that change wasn't just about firing the disrespectful employees. It was about planting the seeds of transformation in the hearts of those who remained. Isabel, the older employee who had shown a flicker of reluctance in the past, was the first to surprise her. Though Isabel had been cautious and reserved, Mary had noticed that, unlike the others, she hadn't been actively cruel. Perhaps there was more to her than met the eye. Slowly, she began to trust Isabel with more responsibilities, giving her the opportunity to step up, to show her true character. In return, Isabel became a reliable ally, offering her knowledge of the store's operations while Mary offered her a chance to redefine herself. But it wasn't just Isabel who had to prove herself. Mary's scrutiny extended to every corner of Golden Sun. The employees who had once sneered at customers, who had been blinded by their own arrogance, now found themselves under a new microscope. Every smile, every glance, every word spoken to a customer was scrutinized by Mary's watchful gaze. She made it clear that she wouldn't tolerate any behavior that mirrored the disdain and condescension she had experienced. And slowly, gradually, the atmosphere of the store began to shift. The employees who had been initially resentful of Mary's authority began to understand that her vision wasn't just about punishing the ones who had disrespected her. It was about ensuring that everyone who walked through the doors of Golden Sun was treated with the care and dignity they deserved. One day, after weeks of careful observation, Mary finally decided it was time to take the next step. She knew that a mere change in employee behavior wouldn't be enough to truly transform the store. Golden Sun needed to radiate respect and warmth from every corner. From the gleaming display cases to the way the staff greeted customers. She hired a team of designers to help her reimagine the space, no longer just a glittering temple of wealth and luxury, but a welcoming haven where everyone, regardless of their status, could feel like they belonged. The transformation was subtle but powerful. The harsh, blinding lights were replaced with softer, more inviting tones. The cold, sterile displays were rearranged to create a more open, accessible feel. Mary insisted on creating a section of affordable jewelry, a collection where customers of modest means could find beautiful pieces without feeling ashamed. She wanted people to walk into the store and feel the warmth of the atmosphere, the respect emanating from the walls and the staff alike. But her work didn't end there. She was keenly aware that physical changes alone wouldn't bring about the kind of respect she wanted to cultivate. It had to start with the employees. And so, She began to hold weekly meetings where the staff gathered not just to discuss sales targets or inventory, but to reflect on the importance of respect, of treating every person, regardless of their appearance, their income, or their background, with genuine care. She shared her vision for the future of Golden Sun, speaking passionately about how the store could become a place of community. A place where people could feel valued not for the wealth they carried but for the people they were. It wasn't long before the transformation began to show. The first signs came subtly. An elderly man who had once been ignored by Alexander was now greeted with a warm smile from Isabel. A young couple, dressed in casual clothes, who had been turned away with barely concealed judgment, were now met with open arms and genuine enthusiasm. As Mary watched these changes unfold, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. She knew that the store wasn't just changing physically, it was changing from the inside out. The new Golden Sun was not just a jewelry store, it was becoming a beacon of respect and understanding. A place where no one would be judged by the fabric of their clothes or the weight of their wallets. As weeks turned into months, word began to spread. People from all over the city, curious about the new store and its reputation for inclusivity, began to flock to Golden Sun. And as they walked through the door, they found what Mary had always hoped for. A place where the value of a person was determined not by their wealth, but by their humanity. One afternoon, as Mary sat behind the counter, watching the steady stream of customers, she caught sight of a familiar face, an older woman who had been a frequent visitor in the past, often turned away with a polite but dismissive smile by the former staff. This time, as the woman approached the counter, Mary smiled warmly, her eyes filled with the quiet confidence of someone who had fought, and won, against the odds. "Welcome," she said, her voice soft but unwavering. "How can I assist you today?" The woman looked up, surprised by the change in Mary's demeanor. "I'm just browsing," she replied, her voice uncertain, but there was no trace of the judgment that had once been so palpable in the air. No sneers, no dismissive glances, just a genuine offer of assistance. Mary led her over to a display of simple, yet elegant jewelry, pointing out a necklace that might suit the woman's taste. As they spoke, Mary could see the woman's face light up, not just because of the piece of jewelry, but because for the first time, she was being treated with the respect she deserved. When the woman left the store that day, her hands were full, not just with a beautiful necklace but with the quiet satisfaction of knowing that she, too, was worthy. As Mary watched her walk out the door, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The store had become a reflection of her vision, a place where respect, kindness, and sincerity were the guiding principles. It had been a long, difficult journey, but it had been worth every step. Golden Sun was no longer a place where people were judged based on their appearance or their wealth. It had become something far more precious, a place where people were valued for who they were, not what they had. And for Mary, that was the greatest success of all. As Mary stood in the heart of Golden Sun jewelry, she felt a wave of satisfaction ripple through her. The transformation was tangible, not just in the gleaming display cases or the softer, inviting lighting that now bathed the space, but in the very air that seemed to hum with a new energy. She had spent weeks, no, months, carefully watching, listening, and learning how each employee interacted with customers. She had taken painstaking efforts to reshape not just the physical space but the culture. And now, she was beginning to see the fruits of her labor. It was on a crisp autumn morning, as the golden light of dawn filtered through the windows, that Mary decided it was time for the grand unveiling. The store had already begun to attract a loyal following, but she knew that to truly make her mark, she needed to do more than just change the way things were done inside the store. She needed to change how the community saw Golden Sun. She needed to show them that her vision of respect, equality, and sincerity wasn't just a temporary shift, it was a lasting change that would echo through the very foundation of the business. And so, she began to put the wheels in motion for a series of community events that would not only bring more people into the store but also forge a deeper connection with the people she was working so hard to serve. She envisioned a place where everyone felt welcome, a place where no one was judged for their appearance, their social status, or the size of their wallet. Golden Sun Jewelry wasn't just going to be a high-end establishment anymore. It was going to be a place that symbolized change, an oasis where respect was the highest currency. One that couldn't be measured by wealth, but by the dignity and kindness with which you treated others. Mary's first step was to arrange a small press conference, inviting local journalists and community members to witness the new Golden Sun in all its glory. She wanted the press to capture the essence of what she had worked so hard to create. The day of the event arrived, and with it, a sense of nervous excitement. The space gleamed as it had never done before, every corner polished to perfection, and every display case arranged with a meticulous care that showcased not just the jewelry, but the store's new ethos. There were no more cold stares or snide whispers. The staff, those who had remained, stood proud, confident in the knowledge that they were a part of something greater now. Something that wasn't just about profits or status, but about building a legacy of integrity and respect. The press conference was a success. The journalists were intrigued, their eyes wide as they spoke with Mary and the employees who had embraced the new direction. The story of how Golden Sun had evolved from a place of elitism to one of inclusivity and respect began to spread like wildfire. It wasn't just a story about a jewelry store, it was a story about human decency. About the power of one person's vision to change an entire community. But the event was just the beginning. Mary wanted to do more. She knew that words alone wouldn't be enough to cement the change she sought. She needed action, something that would make people not just think differently about Golden Sun, but feel differently about it. And so, she organized a Community Appreciation Day, a celebration that would include free gifts, special discounts, and most importantly, an opportunity for people to share their stories. On the day of the event, the store was buzzing with energy. There were customers old and new, many of whom had never dared step foot inside Golden Sun before. There was a sense of camaraderie in the air, a feeling of belonging that Mary had longed for since the beginning. People from all walks of life, young and old, rich and modest, mingled freely, no longer divided by the invisible barriers that once existed. It was in those moments that Mary realized her dream had been realized. Golden Sun Jewelry had become more than a store, it had become a reflection of the community itself. It was a place where people came to connect, to feel valued, and to celebrate the joy of being treated with respect. The event was a resounding success. By the end of the day, customers were leaving with more than just their purchases, they were leaving with a sense of pride. A feeling that they had been a part of something truly special. And as the last guests trickled out the door, Mary stood behind the counter, her heart full of gratitude. She had done it. Golden Sun Jewelry was no longer a place of exclusion and judgment, it was a sanctuary of inclusivity and respect. But Mary's work wasn't finished. She knew that the true test of Golden Sun's transformation would come in the weeks and months that followed. Would the changes she had made endure? Or would the old ways creep back in? There were still challenges ahead, there were still skeptics. Still those who would look at her store with doubt. Still those who would resist the change she had fought so hard for. But Mary was undeterred. She had seen the power of one person's resolve to make a difference. She had seen how far kindness could go, how much respect could alter the course of a community's future. As she walked through the store that evening, the last rays of sunlight casting long shadows on the walls, she caught sight of a young woman who had been quietly observing the new setup. The woman's eyes sparkled with curiosity, and as their gazes met, Mary felt an unspoken understanding pass between them. This was more than just a business to Mary, it was a mission. And as long as she had the power to lead, she would continue to ensure that Golden Sun Jewelry remained a beacon of respect for all. A testament to the profound truth that every person, no matter their background or appearance, deserves to be treated with dignity and grace. And in that moment, Mary knew her journey was far from over, it was just beginning. As the days passed, Mary watched with a mixture of pride and anticipation as Golden Sun Jewelry continued to evolve, becoming something far more significant than she had ever imagined. The changes she had made were no longer just a ripple in the water, they had become a powerful current sweeping through the heart of the store, leaving behind an unmistakable trail of transformation. The employees, once stifled by their own prejudices, were now embracing a newfound sense of purpose. There was an energy in the air that Mary had never felt before. A hum of possibility. Of people beginning to understand that they were part of something much greater than themselves. But there was still more to be done. Though the community was embracing the change, There were still some lingering questions, especially when it came to the employees who had once treated customers with scorn. Mary had already taken steps to remove the most flagrant offenders. But she knew that redemption wasn't just about removing the bad, it was about fostering the good. She wanted to ensure that every person who worked at Golden Sun Jewelry understood the new vision. That they were not just employees, but custodians of the store's culture. After all, this wasn't just about selling jewelry, it was about selling respect. About demonstrating that true value isn't found in the price tag but in how people treated one another. It was during one of her routine visits to the store that Mary saw something that caught her eye, a young woman named Elena, whose bright eyes seemed to carry the weight of an old soul. Someone whose smile could light up a room with its sincerity. Elena had been with Golden Sun for only a short time, but she had quickly become one of the most beloved members of the team. She had an innate ability to connect with people, to make them feel seen, heard, and valued. Unlike some of the others, Elena never looked down on anyone. She treated every customer as if they were royalty, whether they came in with the latest designer bags or simply a bag from the local grocery store. Mary had noticed Elena's authenticity from the moment she stepped through the door. And today, she was watching as the young woman patiently helped a grandmother pick out a delicate silver bracelet. The elderly woman had been hesitant at first, unsure if she could afford anything, but Elena's warm smile and gentle words soon put her at ease. By the time the woman left, she was clutching the bracelet like a precious treasure, her face glowing with the kind of joy that only comes from feeling truly understood. Mary couldn't help but smile as she watched the interaction. This was exactly what she had envisioned, a space where people from all walks of life could come in. Not just to shop, but to experience a sense of belonging. It wasn't just Elena who had embraced this vision. Isabel, the older employee who had once been skeptical and distant, had also undergone a change. At first, Isabel had treated Mary with caution, unsure if this new direction would stick. But over time, she had come to appreciate the deeper meaning behind the transformation. Isabel's experience and quiet wisdom had become invaluable assets to the store. She had grown into a mentor for the younger staff, always ready with advice or encouragement when needed. In her, Mary saw a reflection of her own journey, the journey of someone who had once doubted the power of change but had come to understand that it was never too late to start anew. Mary's heart swelled as she took in the scene around her. Golden Sun Jewelry wasn't just a store anymore, it was a living, breathing testament to what could be achieved when people chose respect over judgment, kindness over indifference. The walls that had once been lined with expensive displays now held the faces of real people, their stories etched into every corner of the store. And it wasn't just the customers who had noticed. The community at large was beginning to hear the whispers of change. People who had once steered clear of Golden Sun now found themselves drawn in by the store's new atmosphere, a space that no longer intimidated, but invited. Mary's sense of fulfillment was bittersweet. Though she had come a long way, but she knew that there would always be more to do. The road to true change was never an easy one. And while she had succeeded in transforming the store's reputation, she knew that she would always have to stay vigilant. She would have to continue watching, continue leading, continue making sure that every person who stepped into Golden Sun Jewelry felt as though they were stepping into a place where they mattered. There would be no turning back, she had made a promise. Not just to herself, but to the community that had come to trust her vision. And so, she stood behind the counter that day, as the sunlight streamed through the windows, bathing the store in a warm, golden glow. She looked around one last time, seeing the pride in her employees' eyes, the way the customers now looked at her store, not as a place of exclusion, but as a sanctuary of inclusion. She had given them a place where respect was the currency, and she knew that no matter what happened from here on out, this was only the beginning. As the last customer of the day left with a smile, Mary felt a quiet sense of triumph settle within her. The journey had been long, but the store was now everything she had dreamed of and more. She had created a new legacy for Golden Sun Jewelry, one where every person, regardless of their appearance or financial status, could feel valued, seen, and important. And in the end, that was all she had ever wanted, to prove that true beauty lay not in the jewels they sold, but in the way they treated those who walked through the door. This story teaches us a powerful lesson about respect. kindness, and the true value of people. It's not about appearances, wealth, or status, it's about how we treat others. Every person deserves respect, regardless of their background. By embracing empathy and compassion, we can create environments where everyone feels valued and welcome. Let's remember that a simple act of kindness can make a world of difference in someone's life. If you enjoyed this story and believe in the power of respect and kindness, please consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Your support motivates us to continue sharing heartwarming stories and inspiring content every day. Thank you.